Welcome everyone, and including a couple of new faces on Zoom and here in person. And I guess we're all pretty much new faces. This is only the second class. we're all new to class. So I thought before we got into some of the content, we'd do a quick review of some of the nuts and bolts and see if anyone is having complications in that realm. On Zoom, we can start there. Folks who are just tuning in today, you can talk if you want. You can do that. We have speakers set up, and the kind of way we've decided to move through this class is that during content, when I'm doing sort of teacher-fronted instructions, if you have clarifying questions, kind of like, oh, I don't know what that means, and I'm going to miss a lot if I don't really check and figure out what that means, you should raise your hand and unmute yourself and say, hey, Genjo, and just ask the question. And likely if you have the question, and anyone here in the hall too, almost certainly other people have the question. So let's please let those flow. And then if you have something that's more of a probing question or more of a discussion-based questions, we'll holster those for the end. My plan is to have plenty of time at the end to have some questions, and then also at the beginning of class two. So homework, there was some homework for this week. There's both kind of, my plan is to give out extra materials after each class happens, likely sharing with you some of the materials that I found were really interesting. And I'm also going to do maybe some mixed media. I mostly gave it's kind of obvious that there might be readings from different teachers and such, but I've already found a couple of really awesome YouTube videos that are from different disciplines. Psychologists talking about the mind, which have really heavy Buddhist themes in them, which I found like, yes, this is exactly what we're talking about. So I'm hoping to be sharing those with you. And there's no, you're not required to do really anything, but you're not required to look at those or spend time with those at all. That's only if you feel inspired. So please, at your own discretion. Oh, some of you sent me a little blurb about your interest in Buddhism and maybe a few words about your life if I don't know you. And thank you so much for doing that. And also, those who told me a little bit about your interest in this class, really helps me be able to kind of plan and go forward and make some decisions about what things maybe to lean into more or less. So you're still welcome to do that. So feel free to just shoot me an email. Did I miss any other big things? Oh, we do have a text that we are following fairly closely. I believe everyone on Zoom and new here in person has received the PDF, and some of you have even come by and we have paper copies, so if some people are here in Eugene and you would rather have a paper copy and don't really want to print that yourself, feel free to come pick one up. They're in the, we have a little store in the temple. People are here, just holler or ring a bell that you find, and someone will come find you. And we'll get that in your hands. And that's by a teacher up in Portland. He passed away a number of years ago, maybe 5 years ago. And he was really influential for the head teacher here. When Ejo came back from Japan, he wanted to start some sort of Zen something. And a group of teachers really sort of held him in that process, and we ended up with Buddha Eye Temple 18 years later. So he's a great ancestor to our community. Does that feel good? Anybody have any questions about kind of nuts and boltsy stuff? Online? No. Yeah, it feels pretty straightforward. Oh yeah.
I was not able to attend last class.
Yeah.
Is there a visual of it or a recording of it?
There is.
Okay.
There is. Oh, I thought I got that to you. So for those who may not have,
okay.
There's Joichi is editing these videos and we're making them available for people.
Okay.
So we have a Vimeo account.
Okay.
That basically, if you find one of our videos, you can find all of them.
Okay.
If you're relatively tech savvy.
Great.
So just reach out if you can't find them. And that goes for everyone if you can't find them. There's also a SoundCloud recording. So if you're kind of on the go and would just like to listen to it. And I'd probably recommend like 1.5 speed. You know, you can speed it up a little bit if you want. I think you'll get all that you really need. So that's also an option. Yeah, COVID's really put our tech game at a pretty high bar. It was something our community knew we wanted to attend to at some point, but really COVID sort of pushed us over that cliff. So there are silver linings to this game. All right, so I was thinking about how to start today's class. We had that homework, and I'm sure people have a number of questions kind of bopping around in their head. I also have a little mini review of what we talked about last class, but I thought we'd jump in with the homework because I don't want to color anybody's experience too much with going over some kind of review, kind of grounding it in my own, what I'm trying to offer. I'm really curious what people got from that. And then further, as I was going over the homework, it was such a raw little instruction that I think may have only made sense to me. So the homework, as I thought I suggested to people, was to watch for a glimpse of driving towards something in your life. And this is, I mean, it's such a broad idea, but an idea, a situation, an action, a state of mind, essentially an object of your desire. Some kind of pushing towards that. And what was that like? What was it like when you noticed it? What was it like in the moments before you noticed it? Did you feel into your body at all and see maybe where some of that tightness or looseness happened to be in your body at that point? What happened to that driving once you noticed it? Did it get stronger once you noticed it? Did it dissipate somewhat? Did you feel ashamed? Did you feel proud? You know, what sort of happened in that rich soup of your experience? That's what I thought I said last week. I don't know, you may have heard a different thing. But I'm curious, so just kind of open up the floor for a few minutes and see what people might have landed on. Yeah, maybe I'll go Cindy and then Wendy in the hall.
Well, I noticed it last week. I left the coast and I was coming back at 4:30 in the morning so I could be down at Whitebird to start vaccinating people at 7:30 in the morning. And that was the morning that they were saying, oh, it's going to snow. And on the coast it's 50 degrees. And I kept feeling this apprehension because I was worried about coming over the pass, over the coastal range. Mm-hmm. And as I grew closer to it, and I kept being more aware of the homework because I'm thinking, this is where my body is, and my body is not relaxed. Mm-hmm. And I'm more and more thinking about how, the temperature is going to drop. And the temperature dropped to 37 degrees, and that was the lowest it got. Mm-hmm. And the rest of the way, I was like, oh, all that stress was for nothing. And I just kind of relaxed. Mm-hmm. And it was fine the rest of the trip, Yeah,
great. Maybe we'll just kind of move around. Like, I would love to just hang out and talk about that for a few more minutes, but maybe let's just get lots of voices in here and then go from there. Wendy?
So, one of my great obsessions is spending time with my kids. So I have an almost 25-year-old and 22-year-old, one who lives in Corvallis, and then my son who lives here. They have busy lives, and generally they're with their dad. He's got more space there. So any time that I have with them, it's so precious. So I get obsessed with this, whether it's a week down the road or 2 weeks down the road, or are we having dinner, and then if we're having dinner, what's on the menu, and is everything going to be okay? I mean, it's ridiculous, and it's and I've seen myself in this, and it's like I really see that kind of grasping and clinging, and then the evaluating, like, did everything go well, and then just the joy of having them there, or the joy, and then, oh, I'm lonely, whatever. Mm-hmm. And so I've really been working at just trying to be aware of that and being present instead of living in the future, because it's always this future event, right? And looking forward to this event, instead of just being present with, okay, right now in this moment, you know, what can bring me joy in this very moment? Like there's this moment that's right here that's joy. So don't be holding out for this time in the future that who knows what it's going to be. So anyways, it's just, that was really what came to mind when you were saying about driving, because it's like time with my children.
Yeah.
So.
And then the slight difference there when you can still have the thought and be like, both the fear there that you're talking about, Cindy, and the joy of that, and slightly disconnect it just from the concreteness of your future idea, like being like, oh, I recognize I'm a little afraid of this happening, or I recognize I'm super stoked about this happening, and letting it kind of like stay closer to the chest versus the like, this is going to be a real thing that I'm going to have to reckon with, and it's going to make me so happy or make me like so afraid, and it's going to be dangerous. Although we need those aspects in our life, we can overdrive them a bit. You know? Well, how about, let's see if anyone online wants to jump in. Is that Daniel?
Hello? Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, I think we can hear you now.
Okay, so mine is pretty mundane. It's just I have a job where I wake up early in the mornings, and most days I wake up, I don't want to get out of bed. So I have to sit there and think, oh, I can lie here and be sleepy, or I can go to work and do my job. And it's like this push and pull in my head. And it generally involves me getting to this place of just, well, we're just going to go do this. You know, it's kind of like flopping between the discomfort of getting up and the pleasure of getting in bed and saying, well, in the future, like neither one is going to be essentially what I want or need. So we're just going to get up and go. That's kind of my mundane experience that I do every morning.
Daniel, would you say there's a place in your body that conversation correlates to between those?
Yeah, well, in the morning it's very much in my belly. It's like a warmth there, where it's like I just want to stay in bed and be so comfortable and cozy. And there's also that, I guess that's like there's also the part in my head that's saying, you know, you gotta go get ready for work, and the two kind of like, you know, are pushing against each other, because on the one hand it's like I'm warm and cozy now, but then there's like another part of me that's saying, but if you don't go do this thing, you're gonna be, you know, missing out on your responsibilities, and then you're gonna, I don't know, quote unquote, pay for that later. Yeah. And so then there's like a part of me that has to, like, I don't know, back away from that warmth, that pleasure, or whatever it is that I'm feeling, and just like kind of just go. And then it's like once I'm going, it's very easy to just continue going. It's kind of like that moment where I'm just lying in bed. That's like, it's like the hardest just to get up. You know what I mean? Yeah. But once I'm going and I'm about my daily stuff, like that struggle kind of just fades away into the background. Yeah. It's very funny. It's like when you stop moving, that's when you feel that lethargy. But then once you're going, it's very easy to just kind of continue going.
Yeah. Kind of a classic a way I was trying to talk about no self, the teaching of no self, anatta. That one way we can see it really directly is those different voices within us. Which one are we? Right? Yeah. It's just it's all called out right there very directly in those fighting viewpoints that we're wrestling with in many ways all the time.
Thank you.
Yeah. Maybe one more, and then we can start moving along. Pam?
Thank you. So I was actually working on some homework for another aspect of my life I'm working on, which is dealing with some trust issues from past relationships. And so I was doing some reading on attachment theory and found myself really, first of all, getting really ambivalent about, do I really want to fix this? I mean, it's kind of working for me right now. And then realizing in my body that I was getting a headache, that my shoulders and neck were very tense, and that I was getting, you know, very in my head defensive and reactive. And I mean, at that point, I kind of put it aside and said, okay, I'm going to let this gel a little bit and come back and reread it later. after I've dealt with some of the emotions around it. But there's definitely a very physical reaction going on there that said that this was hitting some deeper issues.
How did where was the place of noticing for you? Like that, I don't know. I just think
Headache.
the headache. It was just kind of like, oh, this is going deeper than I think it is, kind of feeling.
Like big tension at the back of my neck and shoulders, where I was clearly tensing up and feeling defensive. And
Yeah. And how lucky we are when we can see something like that unfolding and not continue to drive into it. Just like a part of us can like pull a little trip switch that says like abort for a bit, like just back up for a bit. Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing. Well, great. And one question, I know all of us didn't get to share tonight, but how many people, when you notice something, I'm assuming I know a number of people probably leaned into this in different ways and found different examples. How much did, once you noticed it and kind of caught something and decided to look at it, did you feel it substantially or somewhat shift? Anyone, maybe just a quick show of, I know for me it was kind of amazing. Yeah. So I'd say most of us, we really felt that. So I guess I won't unpack that too much here, but that's an example that it's like probably at the core of Buddhist teaching. Really, just kind of observing our sort of daily operating patterns, and we'll get into that in more detail here. So maybe we'll pause on the homework now and bracket that, and maybe if people are feeling psyched about it, we can come back to more of those examples after towards the end of class. But I'm curious what kind of questions people have floating around from last class. Is there anything that people are just like, that didn't make any sense, or something that might have come up in the reading or the other supplemental reading offered by Tanisaru Bhikkhu? Yeah, Shara.
Hi, so I watched the recording of it and missed the first class, but one thing that I had a question about was just in the teaching of impermanence, about maybe some instruction or speaking to how to not use or lean into the impermanence as like a tool for spiritual bypass. I don't know if you know what I mean by that.
Yeah. Maybe for people who don't, how are you using that term spiritual bypass, and how does that fit into? Yeah, can you say a little bit more?
It was a way to really avoid or not face, like in a true way, what you're experiencing or something you're afraid of, or all kinds of things through kind of focusing on that it's impermanent, so I'm not going to allow myself to actually feel or experience this, whatever it is, this thing.
Yeah.
So it's not taking a teaching, but using it in a way that isn't actually maybe going to be helpful. Yeah.
One thing, and I've been having more talks with Edro about this, I'll speak to that, and kind of a question about, I'm just realizing more and more the baked-in patriarchy to our tradition, and how oftentimes the teachings are really pointed to a male ego, and how to simmer it down, how to back off of things, and how much good can come when many of us, and that's not to say that it's just a teaching for men, but when we have really a heart of grasping and holding on to things and a heart of domination, what kind of medicine can meet that? What kind of medicine can help the world flower in a way that doesn't have to relate directly to my control of it or my allowing of that to happen, but rather something that is beautiful and alive without me having to make it happen, that's not connected to my agency. So a lot of times we can hear the teaching just from that angle, but actually two of the things that are said to, I've mostly heard this teaching talked about in relationship with meditation, that two of the afflictions, the main afflictions we experience when we sit down and face meditation or face the wall, is distraction and dullness. So actually, Aaron, I think this might kind of talk a bit about a question you had.
Resonating.
Yeah, and I also felt like I fielded that my response poorly, and part of why I asked that Joe about it. But that dullness is equally problematic. That kind of just like, oh well, this is all wild. Like you're saying, there's so much going on. How could I ever meet it? All these things are coming at me. How could I rise to the occasion with them? So I'm just going to not play the game at all. And then there can be quite a bit of danger in that, especially with some of the teachings that are like, no self, just destroy your ego, get out of the way. And in particular, that's a message that many women receive from a patriarchal society, right? Get out, like, we'll do all the talking here. We make the decisions, go home, like make all that work and be steady. And if you do that, we'll take care of everything else, right? That's an oversimplification, but I think part of that is very true for our culture and something we're working with. And again, not that this is only the experience of women and only the experience of men. I know there's plenty of times I sit down in meditation and I just shut down, or lots of projects come my way and a part of me just turns off. It says, I'm going to find any way I can to avoid this. And so I think the teaching of impermanence, in one sense, I think we can think of that as like, how do I approach impermanence? Which says that I like can choose how to touch it. But I think a way that I feel might touch upon your question is when we sit down in meditation, we realize that I am impermanent. I am no selfing all the time. I am impermanencing all the time. And when we realize that our gears are totally churning with the entire world all the time, and we, in one sense, we don't quite have a choice about that. And so we can wake up, we can either, spin in tight little loops that I think I can control, or totally disconnect. Those are strategies to deal with the intense vulnerability that's there. But meditation and these teachings, I think, point to a more just direct meeting of the impermanence and being jerked around a little bit and learning from that. How does that land with what you were bringing forward, Shara?
Yeah, no, thank you for that.
Any other burning concerns? Cindy?
Well, what I got out of the reading was the concept of taking the self out of selflessness, right? And I've had a lot of deep thoughts about that. So if I'm doing something that's considered to be a selfless act, such as giving vaccinations, yet I'm getting satisfaction out of doing this, is this truly then a selfless act? And so that's been going through my, that's been kind of the thought that's been going through my head, is selflessness is disconnecting the self from the act. Does that make any sense?
Definitely. Yeah, this is going to tie in really well with kind of the next 2 or 3 teachings that we're talking about, is that the Buddha advised people to do certain things. And one of the very first ones is to give things away. You think things are real is one of the diagnoses. You think things are real, you think you can have them. A very direct medicine for that is to give things away. And then as one becomes familiar with that and learns kind of a freedom of that, then there become more subtle and subtle teachings about what you now need to no longer cling to. Because almost exactly what will happen for every being is then you get to be the real person who is good at giving things away and making other people feel good and you feel good. And in Buddhist teaching, this is it's quite wonderful. It says, that's fine, great. Almost every being needs to go through that process. If we talk about liberation and nirvana and ultimate peace and joy, that's a really important step. And then the Buddha he really advertises feeling good, actually. He says, you want to get to the heavenly realms? Here's how to do that. And then he's very sly this way. Then he says, there are some drawbacks with that. that's not going so. You're still falling into troubling places. Maybe you have nothing to give sometimes. You know, what then? What do you do? And that those good deeds, when we talk about that as accruing merit, when you give something away and you do selfless acts, you accrue merit, basically good juju. We'll go into this teaching a little more detail later. But that actually, in the Buddhist teaching sense, it runs out. And if you've been feeling good and feeling generous, that will actually set you up for kind of difficulty later on, versus kind of really centering, let's say, on impermanence and no self, and not biting down on the fact that I am a generous person, and therefore you can stay free from some of the traps of shooting up as being the generous being, and then sometimes being the not generous being. So maybe we'll bracket that, because I think today we'll push into that quite a bit. That sounds good. Okay, well maybe we'll start in on some content, and I'll do a quick review of last class. Oh, wow, that took a while. That's good. We got time. So quick review, right? Impermanence, no self. I think actually I'll skip most of this. One thing, just to point that to, especially people who are plugged in here with teachings on a regular basis, those are sides of the term that you'll hear a lot, emptiness, right? Things are empty is another way to say that they are overly full of things that are utterly ungraspable. They're so full and bursting with life that the only way to adequately describe the total fullness of the cup is the cup here now. Like, you can't get past the actuality of things. The moment you try to know it in some kind of abstract way, you've lost the juice of life, basically. And you've taken a picture that's kind of a clunky representation of reality, and that has problems for a living being. That has ramifications. And so the Buddha woke up to that complete intimacy of life and engaged in teachings to help free people from that. So I said a quote last class that the mother of the Buddhas, Prajnaparamita, people might also have heard that term thrown around, an archetype of wisdom, the womb of the Buddhas. She is an ever-flowing fountain of incomparable light. That's really beautiful. An ever-flowing fountain of incomparable light. So really likening reality to this. Likening reality, the complete ungraspable flow of the torrent of life. Ever-flowing. We can't just take a picture of it and know it, but we can experience, we can be with it. I really like the image of if you go down to a river and someone says, take up the river in your hands. Right? You're like, what? I can't do that. But you can just open your hands and plunge them into the river. And in one sense, in that way, you're holding the entire river, right? Kind of flipping that on its head. So to drive this home further, let's extend this idea by thinking about meditation and sort of drawing playful caricatures of someone meditating who's really on their A game with meditation. They are totally in the flow of, they're in accord with these really root teachings about reality, that there's no self and there's nothing that stays permanent. How does that person's meditation look? And someone who's totally out of tune with that, right? So I don't know about you all, but sometimes when I go down to sit some meditation, I get on the cushion, and it's a totally harrowing and maddening experience. There's, right, as Daniel was saying, there's this part of me that's seeking this kind of comfort. There's sort of me that's like, the meditation, it's so good for me. Part of me is like, this is awful. This is the worst. And so it can be kind of disturbing. And even things that we like, even perspectives that we appreciate and come upon, they're ephemeral. And meditation, or basically, and the kind of meditation I'm talking about here, I would say, is not really an object meditation, but the kind of meditation we do in this school, which is objectless. It's really more of deep awareness practice. And that awareness really shows you directly that these things inside you, all the things outside you, are really outside of your control. You are beyond you, in a sense. And Buddhist teachings say that to living beings, that's quite a disturbing fact to sit down and look at. And I think from a Buddhist sense, we can also say that the de facto modality of living beings is things that feel good and are pleasant and seem good. We try to get those close and near, and we try to make them last. Things that are unpleasant, not satisfying, we dislike them, we try to push them away, and if they are present, we are dearly hoping that they will be ephemeral, right? We're really just seeking kind of what we want when we want it. It's really that simple in some ways, and kind of that shameful. That's just the basic modality of human beings. And so, unfortunately, or we could also say fortunately from a Buddhist perspective, these two truths of no self and of impermanence, you're revealed, you're beyond your control, and that the objects of our desire are really ungraspable. And what's even the kicker is when you get them, they also disappear. Even when you get them, you can't keep them. So, the torrential river, the flow of light, that's our home. That's our home. I don't know. I still remember the very first time I sat meditation. I remember it very clearly. I was doing everything wrong because I didn't even go look up a YouTube video. My knees were like jutting out into the air. I was sitting on some couch pillows. I wonder if anyone had a similar experience. And I was like, okay, I'll set my timer for 20 minutes. And set it there, and I sat down. And it was miserable. It was really miserable. And I had to just like tie a rope and say, the timer's working, it's going, it's fine. I'll be okay. And then finally I was like, my timer's broken. This is awful. And I looked down at my timer because I decided I was going to stop. And it just went 3, 2, 1. Beep, 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 beep. And it was just so clear. It was so clear. It's like my mind is an awful place to be. I am an awful place to be. And so, hence running around, I remember I had to pull myself away from my video games to do that, and away from my phone, away from finding some creative, clever, fun, enjoying thing to do. To just stop and watch the total uncertainty and anxiousness at the root of my being was really the worst. It was really the worst. So sometimes, I was telling Ciara this on Sunday when we were talking about meditation, sometimes I'm worried about sunshiny Buddhists, that I call them in my head. People are a bit like, yeah, meditation just makes me feel great. I just think they're on another planet. And I believe that now. I wonder, people may have that kind of karmic, body that's led them to that place. But for me, really, what drove me to the cushion wasn't really about bliss. It really started with suffering. It really started with difficulty and finding that as I chased the world and trying to make things good, I found that I got farther and farther away. And finally, I read a bunch of books that said, we can't tell you. We can't tell you what it is or what it's about, but you can sit down and watch your mind. So I did that, and it gave me kind of an uncomfortable truth, I'd say. So it's my confessional about my first meditation experience. We'll move on now to the shinier side of this coin, someone who is totally in harmony with the truths of no self and impermanence. And so I'm not really an authority on this game. I'm just a boy in the Dharma, as I remind myself often. And if you're interested and curious about the kind of layers of what's traditionally called samadhi or concentration, there's lots of systems for talking about this. I think every school seems to be fairly different. The different schools and layers and traditions of Buddhism, they have different ways of talking about this, and that it's important to go and study those if one is interested. So you can do that, lots of resources on the internet. But I think a simple kind of discussion here can be really helpful. So if one is in harmony with these ideas, something that will likely be present is a kind of non-pursuit. If you're aware that no state, situation, feeling lasts, no perspective you can get will really pin the world down, what are you going to be chasing for? What are you going to be trying to get? Acceptance that really everything is changing all the time. So I have here underlined, no gaining mind. That's something that's often talked about in Zen circles. That this is really an idea of the Zen school, that as you go about your day, you receive, as a monk, you receive the gruel in your bowl, and you don't have a gaining mind of anything outside of that, but you can stay with the actuality of whatever's offered. And then the world, rather than becoming a project, can be much more of an offering. So there's no need to gain a correct view of the world, and there's also no need in this place to banish a stupid view. You don't even have to get rid of your stupidity and the rather unpleasant parts of yourself, if you're really centered in these ideas. Because really the sublime states of experience and the kind of, hell realms of being and difficulty and yearning, unsatisfied yearning, these places are just as ephemeral and uncultivatable as others. So there can be a kind of freedom in that, I'd say. So here, intimacy over control. Intimacy over control. Curiosity and awe over evaluation, right? The world becomes much more like terrain, and as you're going along the rises and the flows, you're not seeking to get to the highest peak or find the neatest shape or color or a neat canyon. You can really just feel into the flow of your life as a kind of terrain, a kind of texture. So, and I think also here, awareness of many layers of your being, rather than concentrated snapshots of one aspect of yourself. So you're plugged into the inside as well as the outside, sensations of your body, the many narratives, stories, selves, and desires that are running through. There can be awareness that all of these things are moving and playing a part, playing a role, connected, rather than, I don't know about you, but often having the experience of, ooh, now my knee hurts. There's a crow outside, and kind of jumping around in kind of a scattered way. So a kind of stability through breadth of awareness. And so we got some.
Would you mind repeating? You said intimacy over control and curiosity over.
Curiosity and awe over something like control. Evaluation. Yeah. And so, again, here without judgment, but here's, I think, really the trippy part of this, is that all the selves, all the things, all the narratives begin to become direct teachers of impermanence, of no self, right? So even as you're going to the heights, as you're going to the depths, just the movement itself, the instability of itself, each one of those moments, rather than saying, ooh, I gotta find the right place to hang out, you can say, oh, it changed again. It moved again and has this quality and that quality, this quality, there. Oh, it was a little bit different last time. And then even we kind of use this coarse idea of selves maybe to say like, maybe I have this self. Well, even that self has gradations. And then down to the place where actually there might not be any self you can identify, right? It just the self, and this would be the form more of a sharp teaching about no self, is that each self is arising in direct relationship with whatever the object of its perception is. we might think that, oh, I just have the jealous Genjo. But actually, there's the Genjo that is admiring, I don't know, the way Joichi uses his robe so well. And I'm feeling like, oh, I wish I could do that. Or this person got a gift, and oh, I wish I could have had that gift. Right? Each one, I don't even have to default me like, there's my jealous self. I can just watch the terrain of that rising and falling. Right? That's a much different place than I would guess many of us hang out with in life. So maybe I did a lot of pre-digestion there. Kind of, does anyone know the term mama birding? Probably young people do. I mama birded some of that dharma, I would say. But there, I just was struck as I was writing all of that, some really beautiful quotes that people return to again and again, very high level. In fact, one of my favorite teachers, maybe people I've ever met, was an old teacher in Japan at the first monastery I went to. He went and listened to there are a couple different types of retreats in the Zen school. One that we all know is, or many of us who have practiced here will know about, a kind of retreat where you're just quiet for 3, 5, 7 days, and you sit maybe 9 hours of meditation. You do a little bit of work. You maybe hear a Dharma talk in the evening. That's pretty much what you do. That's one kind of retreat. Another really popular one is you're doing quite a bit of sitting, but someone's giving formal teaching about a book by a very famous teacher, this person that I'm about to give you a quote from. But anywho, just a little drop there. There are other things than just sitting quietly for 9 days that are said to be helpful within the Zen school. I just like to give that a little bit of airtime when I get the opportunity. So this quote came to mind, and my favorite teacher, he spent a number of days with a teacher hearing more commentary about this. So I'll give you the quote, and then I'll break it down bit by bit. So this is from the Genjo Koan by Dogen Zenji. And I'll likely send out this whole fascicle to everyone tomorrow. But very early in the sutra, or the teaching, he says, to study the way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be verified by the 10,000 things. 10,000 things is the classic code word for everything. So, I'll read it again. To study the way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be verified by the 10,000 things. So, to study the way. If you want to study, the way as true, lasting happiness, as endeavoring and belief in the possibility of a better life, you must study yourself. You must look at your eyes with which you are viewing the world, which there's a little bit of a conundrum in there. Look at your eyes, right? How do you look at your eyes? And to study the self is to forget the self. And I don't know if I really like that term, the to forget. I think for me it feels a little bit more like to study the self is to become forced of the awareness that you are not the self you thought you were. That in a way it's being forgotten, but it feels like a very active forgetting. It feels like learning moment after moment that the idea of a permanent kind of me that I can know or figure out or pin down isn't possible. Instant after instant of change and different beings, barking at each other, falling asleep. All of that sort of like shaking me from the husk of selfhood. And here, in case we think that means a kind of dullness, a kind of distraction, a kind of distance from the world, that in forgetting the self, we are verified by everything. 10,000 things. The rushing of the light, the incomparable flow of light That's life becomes you. It becomes you. Later in that fascicle, he has a quote. Those who greatly realize delusion are Buddhas, and those who are greatly deluded about realization are living beings. It's pretty sharp. Those who greatly realize delusion are Buddhas. Those who are greatly deluded about realization are living beings. I don't know about you all, but it's just kind of hilarious how often I think I've got it. Things seem to be going well, and I'm like, yeah, I've got the plan. I'm on this new diet, and I am like experimenting with intermittent fasting, and it's awesome. I'm really enjoying that exploration, and I think, yeah, this is the key to everything. And of course it's not. Of course it's not. But again and again, we're sort of on the lookout for the key to like figuring out life. I got the good plan. I got the good situation. I can set all the circumstances in this way. I'll just go, to be greatly deluded about realization. Versus a Buddha who moment after moment, just another instance of the terrain of life. Just another instance. Just another instance. How could I pick this one as superior over to another one? How could I do that? So maybe we'll pause there. Any questions, clarifying, or we could go slightly probing? We have a little bit of time. Okay, we will plunge further then. Oh, Cindy was good. Okay, we got two, Cindy and Pam.
Go ahead.
Pam's on the screen.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. I don't know if we can hear you.
Okay,
Pam.
I just want to, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I've really been thinking about what Shara said at the beginning, and your point. A lot of it are built around kind of letting go of control issues, and just as a point that I am also really interested in avoiding the pitfalls on the other side of that, because I do tend a little bit more towards kind of nihilism and extreme relativism, like, yeah, I'm just going to let it go, and I'm just going to check out from all that rat race, and so that was a really interesting thing to start thinking about for me.
This word is coming to me. What's a way that you feel you are verified by something? At least I really like this language of Dogen's. And that to me speaks to this side of being grabbed by the world in a way. Does that language speak to you at all, Pam? Or does it feel like, I don't know, it might feel a little esoteric. I don't know.
I don't know. I think I'm going to have to, it didn't resonate at first, but I think I'm going to have to think on it some more.
Yeah. Oh, thanks for sharing. Cindy?
So what I kind of get out of this is like, well, you're just kind of going with the flow, it's like, well, this train's kind of sucking right now, but it'll get better and kind of balance things out, I mean, it may be bad, but it's going to be good again, and so it's just kind of like, just go with it.
Yeah.
Am I hitting anywhere close to what it's saying?
Definitely, and I think you're actually pointing out a kind of, for lack of a better word, weakness of the presentation I was making, and I've been chewing on how to bring this other side, because there is such a side that's go with the flow, and there's another side that's like wielding a sword, or realizing there's like a dagger at your throat. That life is that kind of has that kind of intensity, and I think one of our I think that's an aspect of what it means to be truly copping to this truth of no self and impermanence that it's hard to put words to. I don't really have good ones. And for me, an instance, I think about one of the things that puts me to sleep like nothing else is when a group, I think we call it, what is it, a murder of crows? There's a murder of crows in the backyard and they're cawing. And there's something about how much it pierces me that I can't take. It just like, I wish I could be totally, Ejo, or the head teacher here, he's totally invigorated by it. He loves it. And for me, I just feel kind of like shattered by the intensity of it and how uncontrollable it is. And this way in which I can't even explain it. I'm like not willing to rise to it. And so in the sense, there's this great part that's like, just loose, let go with the flow. And another one is like meet things. Like really meet things. Like there can be, I think, a tendency to be like, oh, I'll get big and I'll just hold things and that'll be good. But I found that I actually got eaten up when I tended to live more like that, when I lived here at the temple. And, you know, a group of, you call them a murder of kids in the neighborhood would come in the backyard. And if you're just like, yeah, I'll just hold you all, this is all fine, it wouldn't be fine, give like 30 seconds later. And so there has to be some kind of conflict at life. And I think also these teachings, I'm wondering how to better express that these teachings are also pointing us towards fighting injustice, to fighting our unwillingness to meet conflict. That conflict is a wonderful expression of anicca and anatta, of no self and impermanence. That actually, if you're not having like conflict in various relationships in your life, you're likely just turning off. Mm-hmm. You're likely just avoiding the mutuality of your hearts. And that the clashing of swords is a beautiful creation together. And I think it's so much of Buddhism can tend towards that, just like you're saying. And I wonder how we turn the volume up on that side. Yeah.
One thing that just really strikes me, Genjo, is when you were talking about the curiosity and awe over evaluation. I have a friend of mine, she's not a Buddhist, but she just amazes me at her ability in a really authentic way to approach life with this. Mm-hmm. It can be the most challenging situation, and her way of approaching towards those exact words, like being curious mm-hmm. about something or in awe. And then what I really notice is that better solutions come in for her. Mm-hmm. You know, like I tend to go, when things are in discord, I tend to go towards evaluation and judgment and I'm afraid or I'm angry, or she's able to move through those emotions a lot more quickly. And then again, what strikes me so much about it, it's the authenticity. Mm-hmm. So it's not her going, I think I'm going to be curious about this situation. Like I think maybe she's just done it so many times that she can go into that, and that I see things that she faces in her life, and because she approaches it that way, she does experience so much more joy. Like she experiences, suffering is so much less. So for me, it's such a real tangible example of how, something like this, when you actually apply it into your life in a really authentic way, can be a big game changer. You start to really enjoy your life and realize that this is heaven on earth, right? Even in the midst of all of the chaos and challenge and everything, it's like she's able to experience that joy.
So well put. Like, that moment when you are in a fight and either for me it was usually probably a good example is with a lover, past lover, and one of us chooses to go the route of honest curiosity, and how much it just like moves through everything so cleanly, like reestablishes connection, and you can be like, oh yeah, there are like very easy ways through this where I don't have to be like the winner or the loser. Yeah. Oh, thank you for saying that. And for me, though, I wonder if this is true for anyone else, that I actually find that much easier to do in interpersonal situations. But when it comes to me, when it comes to my mind and my selves, I find it much harder. I think I know me better and can evaluate better. And yeah, that's always a good reminder. All right, let's move on to some new content. New content, yay. So I think I'm gonna pull kind of an audible. And Joichi, let's hand out all of those, all the stuff. So folks online, Joichi is going to send you a link that'll take you to a neat picture that we're gonna be talking about. And we're going to talk about the wheel of life. This is something I mentioned just really briefly at the end of class.
One moment.
And it's also, for those of you who have printed out the PDF that I sent you, this is the actual image that's in the book. It's on page 38 of the book. So if you want to just grab it and look at a hard copy rather than looking at it on the screen, you can do that. Holly, you're whispering this up. What are you seeing? What?
I don't know.
It's pretty wild, right? Have you seen it? Have you seen this before?
No.
Oh, wonderful. Have people seen this before?
No.
Oh, great. This is one of my favorite teachings. Yeah, the imagery in this is so wild. So again, this is what do you even call it? This is a visual representation of teachings that there was said to be a disciple of the Buddha. I've heard two kind of origin stories about this image. One is that there was one of the Buddha's disciples was said to have this kind of power of vision. He could see living beings in the world that other people couldn't see, and he gave some teachings on that, and the Buddha was like, yeah, that's right on. We should draw pictures of that and put it in every monastery. That should be around. People should look at this and try and understand this. And then another origin story I heard was one of the Buddha was friends with a king who happened to be about his same age. They were like buddies. It's very sweet to hear some of the stories about them. And another neighboring king gave the Buddha's friend king a very, rare gift, and that king had nothing to give back. And he's like, oh, Buddha, what do I do? I've been given such an exquisite thing. And the Buddha was like, I got something for you. And he basically had this image made, and he said, give this to that king, and say that this is a great treasure. And it was said that that king, of course, spent some time with it and attained some kind of realization in the truth. So that's where this comes from. And maybe without too much further explanation, I'll kind of dive into some of the content because I want to get us prepped to be talking more about this next class. So it's said to be that there are 5 or 6 realms of living beings that exist. And in one sense, we could be thinking about this image in so many different ways, but we can think of it as actually. We could think that these beings live in some corporeal realms here in this universe. We could also think about this psychologically. We could think about this as places that we as living beings traverse. In one way, you could think psychologically. I like to think of it more mythically, that ourselves are so deeply flexible, that imagery, like when you go to sleep at night and you become another person in your dream, you make up all sorts of terrains and situations, that a part of us really lives deeply in that place, and that this imagery speaks directly to that. So that's the place I tend to go when I encounter this teaching, but you can do with it, you can let it land wherever it does for you. So these 6 realms, we'll start at the top. That is the realm of heavenly beings. They are said to enjoy exquisite pleasures and be quite disembodied in many ways. They it's a good place to be, but interestingly enough, it's not the best place to be in terms of a Buddhist idea of liberation. This is going, I forget, I asked this question. Well, when you're giving things away and you feel quite selfless and you get this elated feeling, and then there can be this slight trap for falling back down, one of the ways to get to the heavenly realms is to give things away. Become greatly generous, and you see that the world is abundant, and you start to live in a more beautiful world. Those are the kinds of things that are experienced by a heavenly being. Also, I read a description just earlier today, someone who lives on a yacht half the year, and then flies to their ski resort that they winter at. Right? This is a person who's quite, in one sense, really disconnected from the embodiment of any other living being. So people who live in fabulous wealth, and it's said to be that this is not an auspicious place to practice the Dharma. It's a pretty good place. You can do a certain kind of work there, but your kind of taste for pleasure and your kind of ability to be disconnected from things is so great that you don't get some of the teachings, like say of anicca and anatta. You're not so pressed up against these things because you can hide out in your pleasure. So there's going to the right and down. This is the realm of fighting spirits, or another expression of them is the jealous gods. Asuras is the term that's used in Buddhism. And they're said to be kind of jealous beings. They are constantly in a place of evaluation and competitiveness. And I love this imagery. They put it in here, and they don't do it in all of these wheels of life, but you can see there's a tree, and the roots are in this realm, and the branches are up in the heavenly gods realm. And so there's this great iconography of there's someone always trying to cut down the tree because they can't reach the fruit. And they say, well, we can get the fruit if we cut down the tree. It's just kind of such a spiteful thing to do. And there's like rows of armies and clouds like fighting at each other. And these Asuras, they want into the heavenly realms, but they only know power and force as their way in. Right. Moving down from there, that's the animal realm. This realm is said to be sort of plagued by base desire. Right? So, and they also have the unfortunate habit of eating each other and being sort of dull and a little bit just kind of, based, I don't have to explain that too much, base desire situation. Then down at the very bottom, this is hell realms. And so the imagery is different in other places. This one seems to be kind of a waterfall on the right there. Another, in that spot, there's also sometimes icy mountains. And then on the left side tends to be fire. And then there's also someone getting impaled there on like a spiky tree, like being eaten by a dog. There's all sorts of colorful things happening. And this is a very simplified version. And another thing to point out here, there's a fellow sort of in the top center portion of that imagery. There's a guy there that's said to be like kind of Lord of the Death, and in his hands is a mirror. And it's sort of, actually this whole situation is the god of death holding a mirror and revealing back, we'll get to this terminology later, revealing your karma, or what kind of energies, what kind of being you are, appear back to you in this mirror. And then, so when a being dies or passes through the hell realms, they pass by there and they view that mirror that the god of death is holding up, and you see your past karma and you know where you're going to be reborn. So that's an imagery that's used here. And that isn't in all of these wheels, but here it is. So then moving on, we have these very interesting beings spewing fire, as you can see. And they're kind of oddly shaped. So this is the realm of the preta, or the hungry ghosts. And these are beings who, they've forgotten how to receive nourishment. So they're portrayed as beings who are, they have bloated bellies, as beings who are experiencing intense starvation, and their throats are incredibly narrow. And another reading I saw is that their mouths can be as like thin as needles. And another description I've heard is that they can put food in their mouths, but when they do, it turns to blood or pus or fire. And so these beings basically think that certain things can nourish them, but it can't. So I think a very tangible experience of this is, say, scrolling through Facebook. When you gonna find the one that's gonna satisfy you? Or another one, I'm going to send a TED Talk, a really beautiful, powerful, maybe painful to watch TED Talk about addiction, and he talks about heaven or hungry ghosts, that beings who are really turned around in their idea of what will satisfy them, what will satisfy them. And then the next realm, going up from there, is the human realm. And you can see, I haven't looked at this imagery so much. You see kind of very humanly activities going on. And one of them is a person who looks like they're sitting meditation. The human realm, and I said this last class, congratulations, you're in the human realm. You made it. It's said to be very rare. This is the most auspicious place to practice the Dharma. It's like the right balance of suffering and pleasure. You're in the right standpoint to get the most full view of reality so that you can detach from basically this wheel as being as the way things are. And humans are said to be, this realm is beget by practicality. And so there can be a lot of striving and trying to conquer things through being practical. And a lot of that has good, building bridges, communication. There's lots of good things there, but that can also be seen as a way to get sidetracked and be distracted from your real opportunity as a human, which is to become liberated in the Buddhist sense. And then we only have a few more minutes, so I'll just say point out a few more things going on here. In the very center, there's a pig, a bird, and a snake. And in this image, they're all holding on to each other. And another image is that a pig is holding both the rooster, the bird, and a snake. And the pig is said to be delusion. The cock or the bird is said to be greed. And then the snake is said to be hate. So this comes from Asian mythological relationship with these animals. Many of us would think of the pig as greed, but the pig is said to be deluded because apparently they would put down any kind of food in front of the pig and it would eat it. That's said to be kind of like an ignorant thing to do. And then the snake as hate or aversion, being that it's willing to strike often. And then I heard there's kind of a mythological bird that's talked about in the Buddhist pantheon. It's like a bird-human situation. I'm really interested in them. They're called a kinara, but they're said to be totally and utterly dependent on their partners for happiness. They're so madly in love that when their partner is tragically killed, which it seems like that situation is just trying to set up that situation, they just completely fall apart. And they're unable to just function at all, and they weep for 10,000 years kind of situation. So that's the hub of the wheel: greed, hate, and delusion. Greed, hate, and delusion. And that really points us to the kind of truths, the metaphysical truths about human life that we've been talking about. It's no self and impermanence. Greed, hate, and delusion are the things that keep us turning and unaware and unable to settle on those and guide our lives by those truths. The next ring out is said to be karma, and this really points out the cyclical cycle of these realms, that you can do all the good stuff. There's sort of someone kind of walking out of hell and going up, getting to the top, and then there's the kind of forgetfulness of being at the top, being I've got it, I figured it out, life's so good. And as soon as you do that, you've stopped paying attention to what got you there in the first place. And you start to head down again. You start to go down in the circle. And then you spend enough time in hell. You've sort of done your penance in a certain kind of way. You've been rudely reacquainted with the truths of suffering and pain and inconstancy of life, then you start doing the right things again, and you start finding your way out of the hell realm. So right, and then the next layer, the six realms, and the outermost layer. I won't say too much about this tonight. This is called the 12-link dependent chain of origination, and this talks about, in a very experiential way, the continuity of our experience, which links moment to moment to moment to moment, and that drives this greed, hate, and delusion, this karma. And it also has kind of, so the imagery around there is pointing to those, and we'll spend a class talking about those. Yeah, that seems like enough to be getting with. And so, I guess for homework, hang out with this image a little bit. Think about how it relates to your experience, and then I'll send out more. Do a Google search about the Buddhist wheel of life. There are just some fantastic ones, and these realms will be kind of shuffled a little bit in various interpretations, and there'll be different things going on inside of all of them. And so I'd really recommend letting that imagery kind of hit in your gut and see what it can kind of help bubble to the top of your awareness. Well, we're just a little bit over time, which I apologize for, but I also want to make sure folks on Zoom feel free to depart if you need to go, or anyone here in the hall can get up and leave. But if anyone has any outstanding questions that they really want to get to, I don't want to cut off without attending to those. Yeah.
Doesn't so much need to be answered now, but maybe in a let it sit. I would love to know more, sort of what you touched on in terms of more the sword as opposed to acceptance. Yeah, I feel like I hang out there a lot and just sort of like letting things be, but I haven't explored that much in terms of more agency and maybe a preference to know.
I wonder if, one word in that. Have you heard the term skillful means? In one sense, the no self kind of pointing to the movement of self, and skillful means is said to be what the Buddha became completely versed in, so that when meeting any living being, he could deliver a teaching as real and as medicine to wherever that being was. And he would say, this is how it is. Give things away. Your life will be better. Give things away. And he wouldn't say, that's going to do this and this and this and this and this for you. He would take that up as real and immediate. And I won't say much more, but you could also think about when we're sitting meditation, I think that's something we're doing with ourselves. Like, we're learning how to distribute the medicine. And actually, this is a really important piece of the iconography, so I'll point it out. The Buddhas are there's a Buddha in each realm. I should have mentioned this. There's a Buddha in each realm holding something which corresponds to a teaching for each of those realms. So for example, in the animal realm, it's a book. It's like read a little bit. That one's really easy. Or the hungry ghost realm, he's holding food that'll actually nourish them. Food that'll actually nourish. And in the human realm, I don't know what he's holding in the human realm. Can anyone see?
Empty bowl.
Empty bowl?
Yeah.
That's pretty classic.
Yeah.
Receiving offerings.
Join the crew.
Mm-hmm. Or in the heavenly beings realm, I don't know if it's true in this one, I'm not looking at it right now, but he'll be holding a musical instrument. Heavenly beings disconnect from unpleasant things so quickly that he'll be singing beautiful truths to them, but it'll be in a way they can cognize. So like, basically it's like, this ain't gonna last. I think of that, it's kind of funny. But, that's a place of the skillful means of responding to whatever being is there. So I will. I'm really curious about that, and
I
hoping
guess
that.
maybe I'll just add
yeah.
one more thing. Is
Yeah.
I think I'm pretty stuck with the curiosity over explanation or like observation or stuff, but I guess I'm still curious of being in a space where you're the one acting, not just, oh, I'm curious about what's going on around me, but actually acting. So, anyways.
Yeah, good. We'll bracket that, and I want to get to that. Daniel?
When you're talking about samadhi, you described it as kind of non-pursuit, or you use that word. And I was remembering like when I first started meditating, I would get sucked into the idea of pursuing non-pursuit. It's kind of this trap that I got caught in. And it was very interesting to like, as I meditate more and more, I catch myself doing it. You know, it's like, it's the classic, I'm not meditating right kind of mentality. And it's very hard because it's like my mind, when you sit and you're like, I should be just totally centered. Your mind is constantly spewing out stuff. And like, that's okay. And being okay with that is like part of that non-pursuit, but it's like, to me, it's just so counterintuitive to like try to pursue non-pursuing in a way that's still not pursuing. It's like, it's learning how to like do by relaxing. Like for someone like me who's conditioned by our society to like constantly solve problems and figure out a way to do something, it's been very, I guess, liberating in a way to try to solve a problem by not doing something about it, just letting it like solve itself essentially. And I feel like that's one of the medicines that I've personally gotten from Zen, like is learning how to like let things be, and then having that kind of be the thing that I am pursuing, is letting things pursue themselves.
Yeah, and it's so, I mean, that feels like that is the exploration of meditation, that where is the active side of the receiving? Where's the place where you have deep participation, but also you're not leveraging or dominating something, right? It's just, I mean, that is, you're just falling on one end of that or another and calibrating that, and
yeah, I think that's where I'm exploring, because I have a fixed idea, or it's an idea of what concentration or samadhi is, and then my like exploration of my experience of samadhi is constantly, like you're saying, shifting that, which makes it, yeah, it's like a thing that I constantly have to remind myself to do. At the same time, not to do. I think that's, I guess what my point was is people were describing this like feeling of complacency, I suppose. And to me, it's like that complacency is part of being, it's a part of it. It's like that feeling of complacency is like there to remind you to do things, you know? Like when you feel like, oh, I'm being complacent, that's kind of like, for me, a call to action. You know what I'm saying? And
yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing.
thank you.
I guess we'll end now with the three refuges. Buddha.